It's just impossible to like some of these stories. The reason why you never heard about them is they went straight to DVD. Stay tuned to see how the true story of Pocahontas ended up being worse than what we ever imagined. If you love Disney as much as we do, don't forget to subscribe and please give this video a big thumbs up. Today we're showing you the 10 worst straight-to-DVD Disney sequels. The Little Mermaid II, Return to the Sea. The Little Mermaid is still one of the most popular movies more than 25 years after it's been released. It was the story of Ariel, a young mermaid who was fascinated by the human world. Her father told her not to go near these men, but the redhead didn't listen to him and even became a human herself. This was how she got the chance to meet Prince Eric, and the two quickly fell in love. Fast forward over a decade, and the two lovers have a daughter, Melody. This is where the story of The Little Mermaid II, Return to the Sea began. This time, the young girl wanted to swim in the ocean, but Ariel kept her from going anywhere near the water because she was afraid of what Ursula's sister could do to her. Like mother, like daughter, Melody ended up breaking the rules and becoming transformed into a mermaid. The story had a lot of potential, but unfortunately, it could never be as good as the first movie. Fans had already seen the original story, and seeing a reverse of the main plot of the first movie was one of the reasons why they hated this straight-to-DVD sequel. And just because they couldn't learn from their mistake, Disney released a third film, The Little Mermaid: Ariel's Beginning. That was just as bad as the second one. Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True. If you have ever heard about this film, don't change anything. Your life is perfect like that. But for those who are curious to see how Cinderella's story could end up so badly, we're here to tell you what this movie was about. In the original movie Cinderella, a poor girl raised as a servant had the chance to go to the ball. And this is when the prince fell in love with her and changed her life forever. This story was so popular that it inspired many rags to riches stories, including a Cinderella story with Hilary Duff and another Cinderella story with Selena Gomez. But when Disney decided to give another chance to the character of the original movie from 1950, they quickly regretted it. In Cinderella 2, Dreams Come True, the princess was already happily ever after, so she didn't have a lot of things to care about other than planning a party. However, we were surprised to see one of her stepsisters, Anastasia, falling in love with a low-class man that her mother didn't approve of. The movie cost only $5 million to produce, and it became the top-selling animated sequel that year, grossing $120 million. But just because people paid to see the movie didn't mean they liked watching it. But there was still some money to make, so Disney released a third film, Cinderella 3, A Twist in Time. That could never be better than the original movie. The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. Based on Victor Hugo's novel Notre Dame de Paris, the story had a lot of potential. It was adapted to make it more appropriate for children, and a new generation got the chance to discover these famous characters. In The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Quasimodo, a deformed bell ringer, struggled to be accepted by society. He and Esmeralda became friends, and just like any other man, he quickly fell in love with her. However, he finally had to accept that she was in love with Phoebus, and gave them his blessing. 2 years later, we had the chance to see Quasimodo and Esmeralda in one of the best French musicals we've ever seen. But unfortunately, their story could have never been better than it already was. Quasimodo tried to come back under the spotlight in The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2. This time, Phoebus and Esmeralda had a son, and Quasimodo finally met his soulmate. We were happy for The Hunchback, but viewers certainly did not fall in love with the movie. People kept criticizing the poor animation, the weak songs, and the dull villains. Fans even went as far as saying that it was one of Disney's worst films, describing it as a cash cow with no heart or soul. So Quasimodo might have found love, but once again, he was not really appreciated by everyone. The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. The Lion King was one of every kid's favorite movie. We all cried when Mufasa passed away, and his son thought that it was his fault. And this is how we followed Simba on his journey away from home. But this little lion couldn't always run away from his past, and when he had the courage to come back to fight for justice, Simba finally became the rightful king and continued the circle of life. But that was not the end of his story. Usually, we love to think that our favorite characters are happily ever after, and we are not asking for anything more. But Disney decided to show us a little more. And this is why they released the straight-to-DVD sequel, The Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. In this movie, Simba's daughter Kiara fell in love with Kovu, a lion raised in a pride of Scar's followers. And the two lovers fought to stay together no matter what their family thought. It's fun to see that the first movie was inspired by Hamlet, and the second film was based on Romeo and Juliet. two plays written by Shakespeare. But most viewers had already seen that famous story too many times, and they were disappointed by the movie. It didn't help when Disney came back with a film no one ever asked for, The Lion King 1.5, Beauty and the Beast: The Enchanted Christmas. When we see how great Beauty and the Beast was, we could imagine it could only get better. Belle threw herself behind bars to save her father from the beast, and as she lived trapped in the castle, she discovered that this creature could be beautiful on the inside if he worked a little bit on his personality. And this is how she helped him become her Prince Charming. Disney fans love this story so much that we even love to watch it a second time with the live-action movie with Emma Watson. But what has she been up to now that her partner is perfect the way he is? We'll never know, because Beauty and the Beast: The Enchanted Christmas was a midquel that focused on what happened during the original movie after the fight with the wolves and before the ballroom dance. In this movie, the Beast forbade Christmas because it was that time of year that he turned into a monster. This is why Belle and her friends tried to convince him that it was a good holiday. However, as everyone knew how their fairy tale would end, they were just making the same story too long for nothing. And just to give midquels another try, Disney also released Beauty and the Beast: Belle's Magical World. We hope that they won't be making this mistake again. Mulan 2. We were tired of seeing beautiful and kind Disney princesses falling in love with a prince. This time, we wanted to see a woman who was truly a hero of her own story. And this is why we were happy to see that Disney created Mulan just for us. This young woman wasn't born to be a housewife, and she couldn't even pretend to be one. This is why she decided to dress as a man and join the army, even if it was forbidden by the law at that time. But we bet that people changed their mind when they saw Mulan save her country. She was a proud and independent woman. And this is why fans were disappointed by Mulan 2. In this story, Shang proposed to Mulan and she accepted to be his fiancé. Then they went on a mission to escort 3 princesses who had to marry princes, but they couldn't keep them from finding love on their way to the neighboring kingdom. In the end, the princesses broke their vows and Mulan and Shang finally got the chance to get married. But fans were expecting another kind of happily ever after for Mulan. Their favorite hero was turned into another young woman whose life was changed by her Prince Charming. We wish Disney could offer something a little different than that. Tarzan 2: The Legend Begins. We were all fascinated by the world of Tarzan. After escaping a shipwreck and losing his parents, a young boy was raised by a gorilla. And this is how he grew up in nature, surrounded by his friends, the animals. Jane was surprised to see this man who knew nothing of the modern world. But that didn't keep the two from falling in love and living in the jungle together. This time, we have to admit that we wanted to see what would happen to the couple. This is not a happily ever after like anything we've ever seen before. Jane won't be living a beautiful life in a castle, but facing the dangers of nature. And we were curious to see what would happen in the second movie. This is why we were a little bit disappointed to see that Tarzan 2: The Legend Begins was actually a prequel. The film told the story of a young Tarzan who went on an adventure to discover who he truly was. The boy felt like he didn't fit in, and realized by the end of the movie that being unique didn't keep him from being a part of his family. The movie wasn't that bad after all, and it was praised for the decent animation quality. But everyone agreed on one thing: this prequel was not necessary. Bambi 2. Bambi was a movie that any child would remember forever. And it's not only because it was good, but because we were shocked to see what happened to Bambi's mother. After she had passed away, we followed the little fawn on his journey to become the new great prince of the forest and watch over the animals like his parents used to watch over him. We saw Bambi growing up during the whole movie, but Disney felt like there was something missing. They wanted to show him growing up even more. This is why they released Bambi 2, a midquel that took place between the moment that the fawn lost his mother and before he grew into a buck. This time, we saw Bambi growing up in the care of his father, who taught him how to survive in the forest. But the young fawn had a lot of things to teach him too. Bambi 2 held one record. It was for having the longest period of time between the original movie and the midquel, more than 60 years. But even though the newest film was praised for the animation, characters, and voice acting, it could never be better than the first one. Sometimes things do not get better in time. Even though it was probably one of the best straight-to-DVD sequels, we think that sometimes one is better than two. The Return of Jafar. Aladdin was everyone's favorite movie when we were kids. Girls love to see the beautiful Disney princess, boys love the action, and those who don't care about gender stereotypes just loved everything about it. It was the story of a thief with a heart of gold who was ready to do anything to win the love of Princess Jasmine. Luckily for him, he had a genie to make 3 of his wishes come true. But Aladdin finally realized that he didn't need all these things to make her fall in love with him because Jasmine loved him as he truly was. This story had so much potential that we had to see another one. This time, the villain would get much more attention in The Return of Jafar. He tried to gain revenge on Aladdin, Jasmine, and their friends to become the ruler of Agrabah. If you think that you are just rewatching the first movie, you'd be wrong. It just seems like some people never changed, and this is why many viewers were disappointed. The story was too repetitive. Fans also criticized that Disney put very little effort into the production of the movie, and it clearly showed. The following sequel, Aladdin and the King of Thieves, was a little better, but it could never be as great as the original movie. Better luck next time, Disney. Pocahontas 2: Journey to a New World. When people watched the first movie Pocahontas, many people criticized that it didn't represent what actually happened. According to Disney, the Native American woman and John Smith were curious to know more about each other's world. They even fell in love, protected each other, and ended up being separated. But the true story is darker than what anyone could ever imagine, and it certainly was not family-friendly. Disney could have had the chance to fix their mistake in Pocahontas 2: Journey to a New World. This time, Englishmen came back to America for negotiation. Pocahontas accepted to travel to Europe with John Rolfe to speak to the king to prevent the war, but on her journey, the Native American hero ended up falling in love with Rolfe. The movie was met with negative reviews from critics, and we certainly understand why. Once again, it was far from what actually happened to Pocahontas, and we can tell you that it was not a love story at all for the poor Native American. This tragedy is not something that would be turned into a fairy tale to make more money. Once again, Disney couldn't make only one mistake, but had to make 2 to learn from it. Is there any Disney movie that would deserve a good sequel? Don't forget to tell us more about it in the comment section below. We'd love to hear what you think. And that's it for 10 worst straight-to-DVD Disney sequels. For more stories like this, make sure you watch